Stroy 1. Muji, the arrival. A long-forgotten village nestled deep within a dense forest had a reputation for strange occurrences. Few dared to venture into its borders, but Muji, a man of unyielding curiosity, found himself drawn to it like a moth to a flame. The villagers, with their hollow eyes and whispers, spoke of a curse that had claimed the lives of those who lingered too long. Muji arrived just before sunset, the golden light casting eerie shadows on the crumbling homes. He had heard stories of the village's dark history, but what intrigued him most was the old mansion at the edge of the village, rumored to be the epicenter of the curse. The mansion loomed over the village, its windows like soulless eyes watching every move. Despite the growing unease in his chest, Muji approached the mansion, determined to uncover its secrets. The air around the mansion was thick, oppressive, as if it held the weight of centuries of sorrow. As Muji stepped inside, the door creaked loudly, echoing through the empty halls. The air was stale, and the faint scent of decay lingered. Dust covered every surface, and the only sound was the distant dripping of water. Muji pulled out his flashlight, its beam cutting through the darkness, revealing old portraits lining the walls. The faces in the portraits seemed to follow him, their eyes filled with despair. He could feel something was wrong, but he pushed forward, his heart pounding in his chest. In the center of the mansion was a grand staircase, its steps worn from years of neglect. As he ascended, the temperature dropped, and he could see his breath in the air. The darkness seemed to close in around him, but he continued, driven by a force he couldn't explain. At the top of the stairs, he found a long hallway with several doors on either side. Each door had a different symbol carved into it, symbols that Muji couldn't decipher. He chose a door at random, the one with a symbol resembling an eye, and pushed it open. The room was small, with a single window that allowed a sliver of moonlight to illuminate the space. In the center of the room was a table with a dusty book lying open. Muji approached the table, curiosity overcoming his fear. The book was written in an ancient language, but as he stared at the words, they began to shift and rearrange themselves into a language he could understand. "Welcome, Muji," the book read. "You have entered a place where the living do not belong. You will uncover the truth, but at a great cost." Muji's hands trembled as he closed the book. The air grew colder, and he could feel a presence behind him. Slowly, he turned around, but there was nothing there, only the darkness, watching him, waiting. The first night Muji decided to spend the night in the mansion, despite the warnings in the book. He found a small room on the first floor that seemed less foreboding than the rest of the house. The bed was old and covered in dust, but it was better than sleeping on the floor. As he lay down, exhaustion overtook him, and he quickly fell into a deep sleep. His dreams were filled with shadows and whispers, voices calling out to him in a language he didn't understand. He could feel hands reaching out, trying to pull him into the darkness. Muji woke with a start, drenched in sweat, his heart racing. The room was deathly silent, but he could still feel the presence from his dream, lurking just beyond his vision. He looked at the clock on the wall. It was 3 a.m., the witching hour. Muji tried to shake off the lingering fear and decided to explore more of the mansion. He grabbed his flashlight and stepped out into the hallway. The mansion was even more unsettling at night, the shadows longer and darker. As he walked through the halls, he heard faint footsteps behind him, but every time he turned around, there was nothing there. The air was thick with dread, and Muji could feel the walls closing in on him. He needed to get out, but something kept pulling him deeper into the mansion. He found himself in front of another door, this one with a symbol resembling a snake. The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit room. In the center of the room was a mirror, its surface cracked and covered in dust. Muji approached the mirror, his reflection barely visible through the grime. As he wiped the dust away, his reflection became clearer, but something was off. His reflection smiled at him, but Muji wasn't smiling. The reflection's eyes were dark, hollow, and filled with malice. Muji stepped back, but his reflection remained in the mirror, watching him with that same eerie smile. Suddenly the mirror shattered, and the room was plunged into darkness. Muji could hear the sound of glass crunching underfoot, but he couldn't see anything. Panic set in as he felt something cold and slimy wrap around his ankle, pulling him to the floor. He struggled, but the grip tightened, dragging him toward the darkness. Just as he thought he would be pulled into the abyss, the grip loosened, and the room was filled with light once again. Muji was lying on the floor, his heart pounding in his chest. The mirror was whole, and his reflection was normal, but the fear lingered. He needed to leave the mansion, but he knew that leaving wouldn't be that easy. The unseen forces. The next morning, Muji was determined to leave the mansion. The events of the previous night had shaken him to his core, and he knew he was dealing with forces beyond his understanding. As he packed his belongings, he noticed something strange. His belongings were scattered around the room as if someone had gone through them. The book from the previous night was open on the table, the words once again rearranged. "You cannot leave," the book now read. "The mansion has chosen you. The curse is now yours." Muji felt a cold shiver run down his spine. He grabbed the book and hurled it across the room, but it landed with a thud, unharmed. He had to get out. As he made his way to the front door, he could feel the mansion resisting him. The walls seemed to pulse with energy, and the air grew heavy with the scent of decay. When he reached the door, he found it locked. No matter how hard he pulled or pushed, it wouldn't budge. Panic set in as he realized he was trapped. He pounded on the door, shouting for help, but the only response was the echo of his own voice. Desperation took hold, and Muji began searching for another way out. He ran from room to room, but every window was sealed shut, and every door led to another part of the mansion. It was as if the mansion was alive, toying with him, keeping him trapped within its walls. As he entered a room he hadn't seen before, he felt a sudden chill. The room was filled with old furniture covered in dust and cobwebs. In the center of the room was a large, ornate mirror, similar to the one from the previous night. Muji hesitated, but something compelled him to approach the mirror. As he looked into it, he saw not his reflection, but a vision of the mansion's past. The room was alive with people, dressed in old-fashioned clothing. They were laughing, drinking, and dancing, oblivious to the darkness that loomed over them. Muji could see their faces, but they were distorted, twisted by the curse that now plagued the mansion. One by one, the people in the mirror began to vanish, their laughter turning to screams. Muji watched in horror as the darkness consumed them, leaving only their shadows behind. The last person to disappear was a woman, her eyes filled with sorrow as she reached out to Muji, pleading for help. The vision faded, and Muji was left staring at his reflection once more. His face was pale, his eyes wide with fear. He knew now that the curse was real, and it had claimed countless lives before him. The mansion was a trap, and there was no escape. The haunting whispers days passed, but to Muji it felt like an eternity. The mansion was a labyrinth, with new rooms and corridors appearing where there had been none before. Each time he thought he had found a way out, the mansion would shift, leading him deeper into its dark embrace. The whispers started on the third day. At first, they were faint, barely audible, like the wind rustling through the leaves. But as time went on, they grew louder, more insistent. They echoed through the halls, calling out to Muji, taunting him, urging him to give in to the darkness. "Join us," they whispered. "There's no escape. Accept your fate." Muji tried to ignore them, but they followed him wherever he went. He could hear them even when he covered his ears, their voices seeping into his mind, wearing down his resolve. He knew he was losing his grip on reality, but he couldn't give up. He had to find a way out. One night, as the whispers grew louder, Muji found himself drawn to the basement. The air was thick with moisture, and the scent of mold and decay was overwhelming. The stairs creaked under his weight, and the walls seemed to close in around him as he descended into the darkness, the basement's secret. The basement was a cold, damp dungeon, far removed from the rest of the mansion. The walls were lined with old, rotting wood, and the floor was nothing more than dirt, uneven and full of stones. A single light bulb hung from the ceiling, flickering as Muji stepped down. As he reached the bottom, Muji saw a large, old chest in the center of the room. It was covered in dust and cobwebs, and the wood was so old it looked like it might fall apart at the slightest touch. But something drew Muji toward it, a sense of foreboding and curiosity mixed together. He hesitated, but the whispers urged him on, growing louder as he approached the chest. His hands trembled as he reached for the latch. It was rusted and creaked loudly as he lifted it, the sound echoing through the basement like a wail. The chest opened with a groan, and inside was something Muji had never expected. A collection of old, yellowed photographs. He picked one up, brushing off the dust. The photograph was of a group of people, standing in front of the mansion, smiling. But their smiles were unsettling, twisted, and unnatural. Muji flipped through the photographs, each one more disturbing than the last. The people in them appeared normal at first glance, but there was something wrong with their eyes. Dark, hollow, like they were devoid of life. And then he saw it, a photograph of himself, standing in the exact spot where he was now, looking just as frightened as he felt. He dropped the photographs, backing away from the chest in horror. But before he could turn to leave, the basement door slammed shut, plunging him into darkness. The light bulb flickered and went out, leaving him in complete blackness. The whispers became screams, and Muji felt cold hands grabbing at him, pulling him toward the chest. He struggled, but the hands were relentless, dragging him down into the dirt. He could feel the earth closing in around him, suffocating him as the darkness consumed him. Just when he thought he was going to be buried alive, the basement door burst open and a blinding light filled the room. The hands released him, and Muji scrambled to his feet, gasping for air. The light was coming from the stairs, and Muji didn't hesitate. He ran toward it, desperate to escape the horrors of the basement. But as he reached the top of the stairs, the door slammed shut once again and the light disappeared. Muji was trapped, the darkness closing in around him once more. The endless hallways. When Muji finally managed to pry the basement door open, he found himself in a different part of the mansion, one he had never seen before. The hallway stretched on endlessly, with doors on either side, each one identical to the next. The air was heavy with the scent of mildew, and the walls were covered in peeling wallpaper, stained and yellowed with age. He tried each door as he walked, but they were all locked. The whispers were back, faint but persistent, urging him to keep moving, to find the truth. But Muji was growing weary, his strength waning with each step. He felt like he was walking in circles, the hallway never ending, trapping him in a loop of despair. After what felt like hours, he finally found a door that wasn't locked. It creaked open, revealing a small room with a single window. The window was covered in grime, but Muji could see the outside world, trees, the sky, freedom. His heart leaped with hope, but when he tried to open the window, it wouldn't budge. He pounded on the glass, desperate to break it, but it was no use. The whispers grew louder, laughing at his futile attempts. He was trapped, and the mansion was mocking him, playing with him like a cat with a mouse. Muji slumped to the floor, despair washing over him. He was beginning to lose hope, the reality of his situation sinking in. He was never going to escape this place, never going to see the outside world again. The mansion had claimed him, just as it had claimed so many before him. But then, something caught his eye, a small, glimmering object on the floor. He picked it up, holding it to the light. It was a key, old and tarnished, but it filled Muji with a renewed sense of determination. He didn't know what the key opened, but it was a sign that there was still hope. With the key clutched tightly in his hand, Muji left the room and continued down the hallway. The whispers were louder now, almost deafening, but Muji ignored them, focusing on finding the door that the key opened. He tried it in every lock he came across, but none of them fit. As he neared the end of the hallway, he saw a door different from the rest. It was old and worn, with strange symbols carved into the wood. Muji hesitated, but the key seemed to hum with energy in his hand, urging him forward. He inserted the key into the lock, and with a click, the door creaked open. The heart of the mansion. Beyond the door was a room unlike any other in the mansion. It was large and circular, with walls made of cold, dark stone. In the center of the room was a large, ornate mirror, its surface polished to a shine. But it wasn't the mirror that caught Muji's attention. It was the figure standing in front of it. The figure was tall and gaunt, with skin as pale as the moon and eyes as black as coal. It was draped in a tattered cloak, its face hidden in shadow. The air around it was cold, freezing, and Muji could see his breath in front of him. The figure turned to face Muji, and he felt a chill run down his spine. The figure's eyes were empty, soulless, and Muji could feel the darkness radiating from it, seeping into his very being. "You should not have come here," the figure said, its voice a low, guttural growl. "The mansion has claimed you, just as it has claimed all who enter. You cannot escape." Muji wanted to run, but his feet were rooted to the spot. The figure stepped closer, its presence overwhelming, suffocating. "But there is a way," it continued, its voice a whisper now. "A way to break the curse." Muji's heart raced as the figure's words sank in. "What do I have to do?" he asked, his voice trembling. The figure pointed to the mirror. "You must face the darkness within," it said. "Enter the mirror and confront the source of the curse. Only then will you be free." Muji stared at the mirror, his reflection staring back at him. The mirror seemed to pulse with energy, drawing him in. He knew that this was his only chance, but the thought of facing whatever was inside terrified him. But he had no choice. He had come too far to turn back now. With a deep breath, Muji stepped forward and touched the mirror. The surface rippled like water, and before he knew it, he was pulled inside. The other side, Muji was plunged into darkness, the world around him dissolving into shadows. He felt like he was falling, tumbling through the void, his senses overwhelmed by the sheer emptiness. But then, as suddenly as it began, the falling stopped, and Muji found himself standing in a place that was both familiar and alien. He was back in the mansion, but it was different. The walls were covered in dark, pulsing veins, and the air was thick with the stench of decay. The whispers were gone, replaced by a deep, resonating hum that seemed to vibrate through his very bones. The hallway stretched out before him, but it was distorted, twisted, like a reflection in a funhouse mirror. Muji could feel the darkness closing in around him, suffocating him, but he pushed forward, knowing that the only way out was through. As he walked, he saw figures moving in the shadows, their faces twisted and deformed. They reached out to him, their hands grasping at the air, but Muji kept his distance, avoiding their touch. He knew that these were the souls of those who had been trapped by the curse, lost in the darkness forever. At the end of the hallway, Muji found a door, large, ornate, and covered in the same dark veins as the walls. The hum grew louder as he approached, vibrating through the door like a heartbeat. He knew that whatever was behind this door was the source of the curse, the darkness that had consumed the mansion. With trembling hands, Muji pushed the door open. The room beyond was vast, a cavernous space filled with darkness. In the center of the room was a figure, shrouded in shadow, its form shifting and writhing as if made of pure darkness. The figure turned to face Muji, and he could feel its gaze pierce through him, seeing into the very depths of his soul. "You have come far," the figure said, its voice echoing through the chamber, "but you are not strong enough to defeat me." Muji's heart pounded in his chest, but he knew that he couldn't back down now. He had to confront this darkness, had to face the curse head-on. "I will break the curse," he said. The final confrontation. Muji stood before the shifting darkness, the figure at its center pulsating with malevolent energy. The oppressive atmosphere seemed to close in around him, making it hard to breathe. But he knew that he had to confront the darkness if he ever wanted to escape the mansion. The figure's eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and its form wavered like a mirage. "You are brave to come this far," the darkness intoned, "but bravery alone will not save you." Muji's heart raced as he faced the dark figure. "I have to try," he said, his voice firm despite his fear. "I need to break this curse." The darkness seemed to laugh, a hollow, echoing sound that resonated through the chamber. "The curse is not just a spell," it said. "It is a part of me. To break it, you must destroy what has given me life." Muji's mind raced as he tried to piece together the figure's cryptic words. He looked around the room, searching for something, anything, that might be the source of the curse. The darkness pressed in on him, making it hard to think, but he forced himself to focus. Then he saw it, a small, ancient book lying on a pedestal in the corner of the room. The book was bound in dark, twisted leather, and it seemed to pulse with a dark energy. Muji knew instinctively that this was the source of the curse. He approached the book cautiously, feeling the weight of the darkness pressing against him. As he reached out to grab it, the dark figure roared in anger, its form writhing and distorting. Muji gripped the book tightly, feeling its power thrumming through his hands. With a deep breath, Muji hurled the book against the wall. The book shattered into pieces, and a blinding light erupted from the darkness. The figure screamed, a sound of pure anguish, as the light consumed it, tearing it apart. The room trembled and the darkness began to recede. Muji fell to his knees, exhausted as the light enveloped him. He could feel the oppressive weight lifting, the curse unraveling. The mansion was no longer a prison. It was free. The escape. As the light faded, Muji found himself lying on the floor of the mansion's grand foyer. The air was crisp and clean, the oppressive darkness gone. He got to his feet, looking around at the once terrifying mansion, now bathed in warm, natural light. The mansion's oppressive atmosphere had lifted, and the once crumbling walls seemed to be revitalized. Muji felt a sense of peace that he hadn't felt since arriving. The curse had been broken, and the mansion's dark power had dissipated. He made his way to the front door, his heart full of hope. As he reached for the handle, he paused, looking back at the mansion one last time. It was no longer the dark, foreboding place that had ensnared him. It was just a building, a remnant of a past that had finally been laid to rest. Muji opened the door and stepped outside. The sun was shining, the forest around him alive with color and sound. He took a deep breath of fresh air, feeling the weight of the curse finally lifted from his shoulders. As he walked away from the mansion, he knew that he would carry the memories of his ordeal with him forever. But he also knew that he had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. The mansion was no longer a prison. It was a place of the past, a place where the curse had finally been broken. Muji disappeared into the forest, the mansion behind him fading into the distance. The village, too, was free from the curse's shadow, and life would go on. But Muji's journey was a testament to the strength of the human spirit and the power to overcome even the darkest of fears.